Good evening, Harry. You're there in Puerto Rico. It's Sunday evening. How are you?
Good, great. It hasn't quite turned dark yet, but it will pretty soon. So you guys are 14 hours ahead of me.
Yes, it's Monday morning here, and I want to thank you for setting aside some of your time on the Sunday evening when you could have been having a sundowner or something to come and have a chat with your friends in Australia.
Yeah, I love Australia, so I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, you're a frequent visitor, or you were up until March
I
last
was.
year. Yeah, so you're well acquainted with our market here, but and you know, and I've been reading back through your research and the papers you've written, because obviously you wrote the boom and bust letter here and the Harry Dent Daily as well, and I felt like I was reading my own material. We share a lot of commonality there. Where you're a 1953 baby, I'm a 1959 baby, so I've kind of had some shared experiences and come through these markets. I started in the 1986. You're probably the early 80s. So we've seen this come along, and you get to see these, this history rhyming, and thinking, wow, this is going to end. It has to end in a certain way, or you think it does. But this one seems to be defying the odds a little bit.
Well, it's not a surprise. I'm just surprised it's gone this long, but governments have stepped in and totally taken over the free market capitalist system by setting interest rates at short and long levels. And those interest rates affect all financial assets, borrowing capacity and cost, everything. So they have hyped up this economy in a period where it would naturally, with demographic and other trends and cycles, be lower, into the greatest bubble in financial assets in history. We thought 2007 was a bubble, or 2000, the tech bubble before that, or the 2006 housing bubble. No, this is, and of course, Australia is the bubble of bubbles, especially in real estate. So this is going to end badly. There is no way it can, but you have to have respect for the fact that they know, particularly in the US, you guys have better underlying strength in your economy than the U.S. and Europe does. Your demographics are not poor. Your real estate is your biggest problem. But what happened here is in 2018, they started to, we'll just kind of taper off a little bit. The economy doesn't need this after 10 or 11 years. Yes, it does. They don't understand the underlying weakness. They don't understand the demographics and the debt loads and stuff. And then the repo crisis came, the banks started just bleeding. And they had to step up quantitative easing, full bore ahead, and then COVID hit, and oh my God, they blew the top off. So this, but I think the problem here, Vern, is that they did blow the top off here. What are they going to do? I calculate now, in the last year and a half, since the repo crisis, and 90% of this was since COVID, monetary and fiscal stimulus together, 65% of U.S. GDP, they get 65%, growing at a miserable 1.5% to 2%, which is what we've been doing the last 12 years, because it has been a weak economy on high stimulus. You have to separate the two. Without it, we would have seen a depression for a while and much lower growth. And what I'm saying is now we're going to see the reverse of the 1929 to 42, what I call winter season. After a bubble economy and weaker demographics, you have a long off and on depression. Last time, 29 to 32, we got the big whack right off. The bubble burst, as it should. And it got rid of itself very quickly, which is the best way to do it. It's like, I hate to say, it's kind of like diarrhea, okay? That's not what people want, but that is what the economy knows what to do. When it has something toxic, it flushes it out. Well, government said, no, we can't have a depression. Politicians, no, we can't have a depression on our watch. So that's when they blew the top off. And so what I see, that was a deep recession. And now we're going to have the deep depression only for a few years at the back end, because from beginning, I've said this slowdown would start in 2008 because of demographics and debt. And we would come out of it 2023 approximately. And so the next generation, the millennial generation, which yours just builds on top of your baby boom. Ours brings us back to where the baby boomers took it. That's a big difference, okay? But either way, they're going to be a positive force again. but not until then. And so in the next few years, I think this is going to come to a head because the next time the economy weakens, and it's already disappointing, already starting to disappoint after a stimulus beyond imagination. I mean, we ought to be growing at 20%, frankly, okay, with this much stimulus. So I think this time it weakens, it's going to fall apart. And then we finally get, to deleverage debt and do the things we do. And then we'll be able to move into the next boom more healthy. If we don't, we'll end up like Japan. I keep reminding people, Japan, they had a downturn in the early 90s. We forgot their baby boom peaked before ours did. Their debt bubble before ours because of the baby boom and their government spending and all this stuff and stimulus. 30 years later, still scraping bottom on the economy and real estate, and stocks are still 25% lower than the top, and we'll never see that top ever again in our lifetimes. So
well, you're reading my mind because
let the economy heal itself.
Yeah, you're reading my mind because I was going to say the alternative is a sort of a death by 1,000 cuts, Japan style, where the markets just keep finding a fall and then settle and then fall again, in spite of all the stimulus. Because yes, you're right, demographically they were a decade or so ahead of the rest of the West.
And the other thing, though, which is also important to understand, and this is true for Europe as well, not the U.S., they don't have a millennial baby boom. Most of Europe does not have a millennial baby boom, only the northern part, England and France and Scandinavia, okay? Japan doesn't, Korea doesn't ahead after actually their baby boom's just peaking. So they don't even have anything to come back. Australia will come back stronger than ever. The US will come back pretty darn strong. The rest of Europe and East Asia will not come back. And China still has urbanization, although it's up to 64% from 20 in the last 3 decades. That's huge. It can edge up to 80 before it runs out of that. But China's demographics is one of the worst in the world ahead. They're like Japan in demographics, that they have no millennial echo boom and no demographic, anything but down demographics. They only have urbanization. Oh, and guess what? They have 22% empty condos and houses in major cities, which means they've already built enough infrastructure and housing to get to 80% urban, even when they get in the next boom. So how are they going to grow at 8, 10, 12% ever again? And my answer is never.
If you stand back, it's just been, because we've come through this 20th century, you and I, the back half of it, and it's just been this, it was an amazing century when you look at it in comparison to all of history. It was just, population growth of 5 or 6 times from 1900 to 2000. The financialization of markets, longer life expectancy. So we got accustomed to
manufacturing revolution was probably the biggest on top of all that. Yeah. The Industrial Revolution powered machinery over labor, but we didn't get into real mass manufacturing till the late 1800s and 1900s. And the biggest figure I quote, Vern, and it's astounding. It was just in the 1970s, was 8 times the standard of living adjusted for inflation from 1900 to 1970. When you said this has never happened in history, never. We haven't made that much progress in all of history.
Yeah, but and as a person who follows trends like you do, you see that people then take that trend and extrapolate that as this is normal. Exactly. And then what happens is we've created this giant Ponzi scheme because they've got to keep it going because all these expectations have been built, haven't they?
Yeah. They think it's going to grow forever. So what's the big deal about borrowing so much? We're going to need them. China's always saying, yeah, we're overbuilding, but we're going to need it in the future anyway. No, your demographics are slowing. Don't you get that? I mean, a 10-year-old could figure that out. And your urbanization is going to have to slow because you've already overbuilt everything you need for the rest of eternity with your urbanization. But you're right. People just extrapolate. We have had, first of all, this great surge in the 1970s, and then in the early 80s, this boom on top of that mass manufacturing and productivity surge. This boom has brought a huge demographic surge on top of it because of the baby boom generation. This is also a once in a lifetime or a once in centuries thing. You don't have generation cycles like this, but about every 250 years historically. So this is going to disappear as well. So a lot of things, like you said, since World War II, It's just been straight up. 2 generations, straight up growth. Real estate does not go up all the time. People who say real estate always goes up, they ain't making no more of it. They haven't studied history. They've just been looking at the last decades in their lifetime and listen to other stupid people like them. It goes up in cycles and down, just like the stock market, with generational buying cycles and overvaluation, overbuilding, all that simple stuff. But we had 2 things there. Just after World War II, for the first time in history, we had a middle class entering the workforce, the Bob Hope generation, the World War II generation. We never had a middle class generation. There were rich people, top 10% or so, and there were peasants, okay? There wasn't a middle class. We had a middle class who could massively buy homes instead of maybe 40, 50% people owning homes, 60, 70, 80% in the country. That gave a big bolt, along with the Bob Hope generation. Then the baby boom came after that. So for 2 generations, we've had 2 once in history events that will not repeat, at least not for a long time. And everybody's thinking real estate can never do anything but go up. You can't go wrong buying it. I would rather buy, as overvalued as stocks are, I'd rather buy stocks today, which I wouldn't, than real estate, because stocks may come back to these levels in the future. Real estate will never, because baby boomers are going to be dying in record numbers after buying, and they're going to offset the millennial buying cycle. Real estate is not going to come back like stocks and the economy are. It's going to be one of the weaker sectors. Oh, all it is simple math. But everybody, like you say, oh, this is the way it's run all my life. Can't go wrong buying real estate, so I'll load up.